This is the Laz Emporium fanzine, The Brain, and you're about to listen to Steve Lazarides discussing his own photography. Steve Lazarides was born in Bristol in 1969. He studied photography at Newcastle Polytechnic, and assisted David Bailey before becoming the picture editor of Sleaze Nation magazine in the mid-1990s. Well, there he met the artist known as Banksy, became his official photographer and eventually his art dealer before the pair parted ways in 2008. Since then, Lazarides has represented a number of other artists under various gallery projects. His latest venture is Laz Emporium, a curiosity shop for the 21st century. The post-COVID lifestyle brand. Among the esoterica on sale is some of Lazarides' own photography, a bit of which we're going to look at now. Steve, thanks for joining your own publication today.
That's okay, Steve. Very nice to be on and talking.
Obviously, I spent a lot of time finding exactly the right picture of yourself to accompany this.
Yeah, I've no idea where you've dug that one up from.
And here's you like crossing divides as ever. Who is it in the picture?
That lady happens to be President Erdogan's daughter, the president of Turkey. I once did a show there and was instructed that I had to give her a guided tour. It was one of the weirdest experiences of my life.
Oh, there you go, sort of effortlessly rubbing shoulders with the future leaders of the world. So we're going to talk about your photos today. And this, of course, was what you were originally going to do for a career, a bit like Napoleon apparently wanted to be a romantic novelist and failed at that and had to join the army to pay off his debts. And the rest is history. And, but you originally set out to be a photographer, and you've been doing a lot more of it recently, and you've always done it. It's like, was it a personal thing for a while as well? I mean, you collect photography as well, right?
Yeah, I do now. And I think at the beginning it was something I just liked, and I had a fairly strange start to the whole thing. When the only reason I took up photography is because when I was at school, my physics teacher, his dad was working on Robin of Sherwood in Bristol, and got me on to the set for work experience. And I suddenly realised for the first time that you didn't have to do like hard physical labour to make a living, and it was a revelation. So I came out of that thinking, all I want to do is be a cameraman at the BBC. And I remember getting an application form from the BBC, and you'd have had to have studied art or done a foundation course in art to get onto it. And I'd never studied art at school, so I couldn't get onto any of the courses. And then there suddenly popped up in Bristol, which I think was the first one in the country, was a photography foundation course. And I borrowed my mate's dad's portfolio to go and do the interview. And I blagged onto the course. And funnily enough, years later, I met the tutor who took me on. And he said the only reason he took me on is because he figured anyone willing to lie that badly would work really hard. That's how I got into it. And then I went to Newcastle Poly to study photography, came down to London and worked as an assistant for a few years down here. But, I hated the photography industry, the kind of advertising side of it. It just felt like it was just soulless. And as you mentioned earlier, I ended up assisting Bailey for a couple of days. And after that, I just thought, fuck it. If you've got to be like him to get to the top, then I'm not doing it. I gave up for a good few years until I came and you took me on that wonderful publication, Sleaze Nation, Steve. And then that kind of reignited things again.
But let's have a look at some of your earlier work. So this is your hometown of Bristol, mid-1980s or a little later?
I think, then I'm terrible with dates, I'm sure I'll be corrected. I think that is 1987.
Someone will be able to tell by the trainers.
Yeah, and that is shot at the legendary Barton Hill Youth Club. in a region of Bristol, funnily enough, called Barton Hill. And I just love this picture. You've got, the fashion from the time, the kind of DIY half pipe, which I'm sure is like, definitely not going to work particularly well. Um, you've got like all the graffiti that was just coming out. It's like it was fresh and exciting. And then, I think my favorite bit is like the tagged up playground. And it was just, it was such a wonderful place. I went up a good few times to shoot up there. It was run by a wonderful, wonderful man called John Nation, who's still on the scene in Bristol now. And a lot of kind of the Bristol graffiti artists cut their teeth up there to go and practice. I'm pretty sure the Banksy was up there at some point. And I know that they were visiting dignitaries. I'm sure Mode was there. There was all sorts of visitors that came to the thing, and yeah, it was just a magical, magical place. And it wasn't just this that was going on. You had, the Massive Attack sound was coming up. Bristol was developing its own music. The underground scene was absolutely rocking, and like everything dovetailed into everything else. It was a great time to grow up.
And how were you like the only person sort of waving a camera around? What I'm getting at is these days you'd have as many people waving a camera around at something like this as you would actually participating or observing.
This is a completely different time to now. It's like a few people that were wandering around with cameras. Because remember, you had your camera, you had your roll of 36 shots. When that was done, you had to take it, get it developed, and wait for your pictures to come back. There was no kind of the instant gratification of an iPhone or a digital camera. And as such, there were far fewer people taking pictures. Like nowadays, this would just be saturated. There would be like all over Instagram and, there were the other social media. But this was just a time where, that didn't exist. So, I kind of think this is a frozen moment in time that to me says a lot about the period and a lot about Bristol. And I shot this on an old Nikon F-type that my tutor advised me to get because he said you could hammer nails in with it and still use it as a camera. I was poor back then, and it's like that was the most expensive thing I could buy. It was like the cheapest Nikon with a 50mm lens, and then film was pretty scarce, so you were very selective about the shots that you took, and it was a very different process. It was like there was more kind of analyzing the scene and working out where you wanted things and how you wanted to look, rather than like the rapid fire digital thing of like shoot 500 shots and then find the one that's good. You just didn't have that luxury.
So there's plenty more shots, isn't there, from that series, and we may be seeing more of them in the brain and on lazemporium.com in the future.
Yes.
Anything else you want to say about Barton Hill? Anything?
Well, Barton Hill was great, but the photos themselves actually have a story in that I'd thought that for the last almost 30 years that I'd lost these negs. And I had one or two frames from Barton Hill that I'd saved as like a little 5x7 photograph and managed to copy that and get an image from it. But it's and it was only very, very recently that I rediscovered them. So it's nice to be reunited with them. And I really think it captures a moment in time, a freedom of spirit, and a slightly fuck you to the establishment. They also used to run a great magazine, a fanzine out of there called View from the Hill. And it was fucking super hardcore, done by all the kids. There were some great articles about how to get around the knife laws. There's also, how to deal with the DSS. There was all sorts of good stuff in there. So it was quite a political place as well.
And has it survived that spirit? I mean, in general, in terms of, because looking at this scene now, I won't say it could be 2021, but you know, even down to that jacket is quite now. What?
Yeah,
Because I personally feel it's still got it to an extent. I mean, what?
no, I'd see. I don't think it's the same spirit anymore. It's different. Like, these guys were, um, they were risking their life. They were risking their freedom by going out and spraying on the street. Yeah, it was a criminal act, and you have to have a certain mindset to think that I want to make art, and I'm going to have to risk something to go and do it. Whereas now, it's like everything's changed, and the property developers are inviting the
It's like,
graffiti artists in and everything else. And I think it just brings a slightly different um, mindset of people that maybe aren't quite so rebellious.
right. Well, on a similar tip, this is another subculture that you've documented, and this actually was in northeast of England in the early 90s. So the northeast of England, of course, a very sort of traditionally working class area, very cold as well. And this is in the rave. So this is kind of after acid house and the late 80s, and more into sort of what became sort of hardcore raving, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this was let's lay this straight at the beginning, right? I never liked the music at all. But at the time, it was in the press all the time. They've been totally vilified by, the Daily Mail and the mainstream press. And I'm thinking, what does it matter what they're taking? Yeah, as long as they're at work on Monday. What difference does it make? What harm are they doing to you? They're not going to be it's not going to be the downfall of society that these kids are out taking ecstasy and dancing all night. And I again, it's a bit like a free. I like the freedom and rebelliousness of the whole thing, and the kind of the homegrown feel to it. That it wasn't manufactured. It was something that had been just suddenly evolved. And so I'd gone to a couple of them, and I was absolutely fascinated. And the people looked crazy, and it was the most. I've never ever been I've been to a lot of events. I'm into a lot of clubs. I've never been to anything that had the kind of energy that these had. So you'd maybe have like 3,000 people in a tent in a field. And like normally these are all guys that are used to the kind of, Friday night fight night, go out, get pissed, have a fight, grab your kebab. It was ingrained in society, and especially in the Northeast. So suddenly you had this like large group of lads, and there was way more men than women there, and who were all the aggression was knocked back a bit by the ecstasy, and it just created this frisson in the atmosphere that was palpable. It was just insane. So it was an absolute joy to photograph as well, because the fashion would change on a weekly basis. If one
Yeah,
week
there's
some
several
guy,
different styles going on
yeah,
here.
if some guy came in with a box on his head with E written on it, then you go next week and there'll be 50 people, and next week 100 people. So it was like super interesting visually as far as the people were concerned. And I kind of it's just a set of portraits really, that kind of document the people that were there. And it
And
was
people can see them, can't they? And if they look in the zine section
yeah,
in issue number naught of the
no,
fanzine. So scroll
um,
down a long way.
and they were a very interesting set of pictures taken. Now I keep forgetting how young I was. I was like 21, 22. And the first image we used to go with the E on the back. When I'd left college, I made a mock-up book from the images, and that was the cover. So I sent Thames and Hudson a copy of it, and they'd invite me down for an interview. And then when I got there and I turned up, they decided not to see me. And I was
God,
in
I
the,
mean, isn't that just that's life as a young
yeah, and
creative?
I was in the foyer a bit pissed off,
The kind of
and
thing
there
your
was a guy
parents
there.
just don't understand when you tell them.
Yeah, and there was a guy there who went, "Oh, can I have a look here?" So I let him have a look, and there happens to be a guy called Ted Polhemus that went on to do a book in an exhibition at the V&A called Street Style. So he landed up using my images in the book, and the V&A used that as a postcard. So it's it was quite. I didn't really think about it at the time, but now I look back on it, it wasn't bad for a 22-year-old.
No. So fast forward to mid 1990s, late 1990s, and this is the Pictures on Walls studio in Scrutton Street,
No, this is actually early 2000s,
right?
right, at this place.
So probably be
Uh,
able to tell by the
this is
Levi cinchback jeans.
Yeah, this is the old Scrutton Street studio that Pictures on Walls was based in. So we'd
Mhm.
taken on this kind of office space, and we split it between where we had the office, which was only me and Kev Chase that did all the internet stuff. And then you had like Ben Ein, who that is there, doing the screen printing with like put it this way, it wasn't water-based inks, and you'd come home with a hell of a headache. And this is the day you can see up in the background, there's the acetates for like the radar rat, the love rat. And then just above that, you can see the legs of the girl in blue. And on the full picture, you can see it. But and this again was just an incredible time. It's like I love subculture, and I never got into this game because of money, because I wanted a career or anything. It was because I had been part of and loved the subculture since I was 14, 15 years old. And I wanted to see it um, be taken as seriously as possible, even from then. And, Pictures on Walls is, ideology at the beginning was to make like cheap, affordable art that everyone could afford. Hence the Banksy print in the beginning being like 35 quid or 150 quid for a signed one. But at the time, we couldn't sell a signed one for shit. Like people were like, I'm not paying 150 quid just for someone's signature on it. Rah, rah, rah. So it was a wonderful way to start things. It's like, so unfortunately, a few years in, it almost ate itself, where the prints were going up exponentially in price like the following day, and it created this whole kind of trading center that based itself around it and fed off it for a long time. But originally it was just absolutely fantastic. It's we had people like Invader making prints. You had Jamie Hewlett. You had D from Massive Attack. It was like a proper collective. It felt like everyone was invested and everybody was involved. And at that point, like Shoreditch would become, or just a little bit before it, Shoreditch would become like the epicenter for great graffiti in the UK, and I'd say probably the world at that point. It was where in the early days where like stuff was trading, like all of the graffiti stuff was trading out of the UK. Um, and it was fun to be part of that. It was nice to watch a subculture grow. I think unfortunately it became so successful that it almost started to defeat its own ends. And then I think it's gone on to be there's such a large commercial element to it now that it's sad to see people doing things for the wrong reasons. And we never did we always did it for the art and for the message. And we did some great things with POW. Just like all the Santa's ghettos and stuff with Banksy. And it there was a lot of artists that passed through those doors that got a break because of Pictures on Walls.
What were people like about a camera being around?
People got used to me having a camera, and because I've been involved in things for such a long time, there's a level of trust with me when I go into a subculture. And I think this one wasn't even one that I was kind of going into, and neither was the other one. It was part of something that I was genuinely involved with. And my wish is that I'd taken more pictures at the time. That I was busy trying to run Pictures on Walls and like working with Banksy and everything else. Was there wasn't as much time as I would have liked to have taken pictures. But you know, in general, people are okay with me with pictures. You know, everyone knows I know the game, and everyone knows that I'm not giving anyone up.
Was it, I mean, did you remember what it was like to work without thinking, oh, I should be doing a video for Instagram?
Yes, I do remember the days. It's kind of, you know, like we'd only ever really do stuff if there was a press shoot coming on or something like that, which was, you know, few and far between. If you had a product to sell, you take a picture, or if you had a print to sell, you take a picture of that. But you know, it's not, yeah, it was a time, it was a much clearer time. And to be fair, like even at this point, you know, this is why some of the photographs that I've got are quite special. And that's not me blowing my own trumpet. It's just that, you know, they've documented a moment in time that, you know, probably me and only a few other people have got. And that's again because, you know, again, no digital cameras, no camera phones, no Instagram, no social media. This is a time, it's just like the tail end of film cameras and the birth of digital. And like the digital cameras is when everything changed because everything was available all of the time. Whereas these, it's like a snapshot into another world.
Would it have been a good thing if Instagram had been around then, or a bad thing, or you're going to say a bit of both?
Um, I think it's hard, like with the Instagram and the internet and everything else, for anything to stay true and anything to stay underground for any length of time whatsoever. I feel sorry for the kids nowadays that are inventing like new forms of music and new subcultures that just get assimilated so quickly. And you know, you see your big fashion brands do it all the time. You know, they'll decamp on a subculture en masse, you know, bleed it dry, and then fuck off to the next one. You know, it was not. It's nice for things to stay underground, I think, and you know, slowly break their way out. Whereas, you know, I don't believe in everything being available all the time, like 24/7 with a constant feed and stream of images. I just think it just makes you like image blind. I think you see so much of it, that you don't really take any notice of what you're seeing because you're seeing so much.
Yeah, I mean, there's another piece, isn't there, about how many likes would that photo get?
If I
But
put
I'm not
that, I
sure how
imagine,
many it would get. To be honest, I think
what,
people would
I
scroll,
don't know.
wouldn't
It's got
notice
that
it.
girl. It's got that girl in blue
Oh,
has
it's
to
got the
say up in
girl
the
in
top
balloon.
corner.
Oh, silly me. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're reading the picture, Steve. It's unlike you.
So, big up Benign. They're toiling
Yeah.
away for pictures on walls. So there's a picture of Banksy.
Yeah, you know, I love this picture. It reminds me of how lucky I was to have the access that I did for that point in time. And like, you know, even this didn't last long because after a while you said you're on about cameras, you know, Banks would get funny about pictures being taken. So I had a period of a couple of years where I kind of had pretty much open access at the, you know, to photographing at the studio and doing like putting stuff up on the street. And I just, you know, loved seeing a picture of him plying his craft, and the fact that that's the stencil of Raven and Somerset Constabulary, oh, it's one of his paintings, and I think that's something that says an awful lot about his anonymity and the reason for it. And it was like the studio that was, yeah, the studio this was in. Um, you know, there was a lot of good things came out of that studio. I got fond memories.
It looks like it might even be professionally lit, that photo, Steve, or is it the studio light?
Oh, you know me, Steve. I don't believe in lighting. I never have done. It's like I always used to shoot, even when I shot film, and it was hard to do it. I'd shoot with whatever light was there. I mean, like create something out of what was there. That's what I was taught was part of the craft. You know, you've got your craft of being able to light a perfect picture, and then the craft of being able to capture a moment, to capture a mood. And I'd rather be able to capture a moment or a mood than be technically superb. So I think photography is there to capture a moment.
In the Banksy Capture books, you don't really sort of nerd out on photography as such in the way. And if you were like a photography nerd, you'd probably be looking at the book thinking, oh, I'm dying to ask him about, what film he used. I mean, I'm not a photography nerd, so I'm sure there are nerdier angles than
There
that
are, yeah.
people can take. But I mean, what were the sort of professional challenges here as a photographer?
It's odd. I found this one quite easy because I'd been at that studio like so many times. I knew what was coming. So you got the daylight coming in from like the right hand side, just above him, and I quite like that moody drop off of the light. It's all right. It's almost like it's vignetted, and I like working in those tough conditions and trying to craft something. It's the same with Sleaze Nation. Like when you're doing bands and stuff like that, you just never know what's coming. You just got to be prepared to be adaptable to what you're doing because things change all the time. Like the light might change, the mood might change. It's like you've got to be able to adapt. And if you've just gone with a rigid, this is what my shop's going to be, with your light set up and your makeup artists and your fluffers and your fucking hairdressers and God knows what else. No, I don't see where the creativity is necessarily in that when it's just all constructed. And I know it might make something pretty, yeah, and it's a pretty picture, but it's not much more than that.
Did you ever get the opportunity to say, "Oh, can you do that bit again so I can get a better shot of it"?
No, funnily enough, I never got email. I never got that option of getting a second shot.
Did anyone ever seize your camera out of your hands and pull the rolls of film out of the back of the camera in a theatrical manner?
Yes, once when I was shooting the Jeep Girls in Kennington Park, and that's where the old I can't remember what the centre was, but it was a yardie hotbed, and we were taking pictures, and suddenly, like, we started being followed, and I had to hand the camera over, and they took the film out.
Oh, so it was not for
So that, yeah.
Banksy, but for sort of
No, not for Banksy, but on another shoot, yeah.
cult Brit house acts in the early 2000s.
Who DJ naked at the George IV on Brixton Hill.
How else was Banksy like as a photographic subject?
Both him and his art were, fascinating to photograph. Really, it's because I'd come from a photographic background, the way I photographed his work was, with always with the eye for it going into a magazine. So, I'd shoot it as a double page spread, or I'd shoot it as a single page, or and that's how I took it in, was composed. And for me, it wasn't it wasn't just about the art; it was about the context and how it was set. Which is why I didn't just take pictures of the pieces put on the wall.
How about what advice would you give young photographers taking photos of street art today? Because when we did the book, I couldn't help but notice a number of sort of street art photography tropes that were being established within the work that I'm now trying to remember, but definitely somebody walking in front of the art, a kind of normcore member of the public walking in front of the
that was a
art.
classic one of mine back in the day.
It is definitely one. And you see so much of it out there. You see people sort of clustered around with cameras around their necks in Shoreditch on the tours.
I think
what are your tips for photographing street art?
I think my tips is concentrate on the shot, not just the art. Yeah, because the art is not the shot. You just taking pictures of endless bits of graffiti doesn't make a good photo. What makes a good photo is it being contextualized, so you can see where it is and what's going on, and how it is in relation to other things around it. Not just a tight close up picture of a piece of art on a wall. It's kind of, if you're going out there and you're trying to document the scene, then document the scene, not just the art. It's about the people and the support network and everything else that goes with it that makes it an interesting story, not just pictures of the art. You want pictures of the people. You want pictures of the people supporting the people. You want to do some interviews. And at the end of the day, you just got to practice. You've got to hone your skill at the end of the day. That's the main one.
And these, I mean, this here, a stencil of Avon and Somerset constabulary shot anonymously.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how this has become the side of a whole apartment block in Barcelona. And it's all completely above board.
What do you mean?
Well, it's look how much it's changed, the art.
Oh yeah,
It's gone
kinda,
from a sort of surreptitious stencil. I mean, the stencils are made because they be quick, of course,
yeah.
to something that is completely sort of above the line.
Yeah, the commercialization of it happened fast.
Is it all bad though? Because I like those big ones. On the side.
Listen, I don't mind some of them, but it's like apples and oranges. You know, someone painting something because it's legal and they're getting paid, and they've been in discussions with the building owner, and they've made sure that they've self-censored before they've been, because they don't want to upset anyone and they don't really want to say anything. So they're all pretty much decorative without any. Listen, if it's saying something, then you got my ear. Yeah, if it's half the size of a building and it's just a picture of a fucking rabbit, then it's like the answer is like, no, I'd rather see something else there. And it's like I said, it's different to people that are risking something to do something.
This picture here comes from quite a distinctive folio. Do you want to go into the whole story?
Yeah, I got commissioned weirdly to go and document the contents of Kurt Cobain's lockup in Seattle.
This is after his passing away, yeah?
Yeah, after his death. So I don't think even you know this, Steve, but it happened. I flew and did Banksy's Turf War show, and as soon as it finished, I flew straight to Seattle to do the Kurt Cobain thing. So it was a rather mental couple of weeks.
I did know that because it's in the book.
So we went there. We get there and I think Courtney had forgotten one of the keys. So they had to drill out the safety deposit box. It had the pill-shaped heart box, the heart-shaped pill box and stuff like that. So I'm in the thing like, listen, I know Nirvana means a lot to a lot of people, but it don't mean shit to me. I just remember, I'm rifling through the guitars and the guitar cases, looking for the art supplies that I was told was in one of the guitar box cases. I was just thinking, damn, I wish this meant more to me. So we were going through it, and I was taking photographs. I found this pot of ink, and it just makes me smile. That combustible bit around the top, it's just a pot of ink with a metal top. Yeah, but it makes me smile every time. And yeah, we were up there for a while, and I documented. Unfortunately, the book never came off, but I have to say it was quite an honor to have gone through it all and photographed all. And weirdly, he's a pretty good oil painter. He had maybe 10, 15 cracking paintings there. So hopefully one day they might get them out and exhibit them.
And you've seen them. I wonder how many other people have. Did they ever exhibit them?
I don't think they have. I think they've been trying, but they just can't. No one can agree, and this and that's happening. So it's yeah, I don't think they're ever going to be seen, unfortunately.
Do you prefer photographing things or people?
People. I just find people's faces endlessly fascinating. It's like I used to love it when I was at Sleaze and shooting the way I did with just a couple of rolls of film in natural light. And I just turn up and I photograph people as they were that day. Like if you were pissed off, I make you look pissed off. If you were happy, then we'd have some fun and we'd do a nice shoot. It's like it's definitely people for me. I did a shoot recently with young H, and I had to play around with something that I hadn't done for a long time. I hadn't done before. I was just concentrating on his eyes and close-ups. And then I suddenly realized when he came back that, like, just a portrait of that eye tells the whole story. And that's what I love about doing people rather than like, I don't mind things, but people are more fun.
And going back to Kurt, can you tell us any more about anything else that was there?
Um, it's like like I said, all the guitars were there. There was like large, like life-size X-ray of his body because I think he was in pain for most of his life. There were like weird desks and like dolls that he'd like pulled the heads off one and stuck it on another, and like just all sorts of kind of like odd bits and bobs.
But maybe rather than ask you to analyze the state of editorial photography and magazine photography, although if you've got anything to say about that, you can. What is the photography you like that you see right now?
I'm not really looking at anything new, if I'm being honest. It's like the stuff I like now is the stuff I liked before. It's like, Bruce Davidson and Joel Sternfeld and Bill Owens and, some of the big American photographers. I still love Martin Parr. I still think he's fantastic. But I can't say is, I guess the newest guy I've really bought was Peter Hugo, the South African photographer. But I don't follow any of the fashions. Like again, for me, fashion is just throwaway photography, and I've just got no time for it. It's like really documentary stuff's what really floats my boat in portraiture.
And what do you think about this sort of the galleryization of photography?
Has it been gallerized though? It's just it's still quite underrepresented as within the art world, I think. And again,
I think you've got a good point, especially compared to how popular it seems to be. It's like a default hobby, isn't it? For a lot of
yeah,
people.
but photography's always been a hard sell in the UK. It's like the Americans like it. It sells in France, but in the UK, it'd never been a big seller. But it's I'd be what I want to see is it displayed in a different way in those galleries, and for people to start doing something interesting with it rather than just doing a 20 by 24 picture in a black frame in a gallery.
Hmm. Do you have ideas?
I do, but I'm not giving them away right now.
Well, here's some of the bits you got on sale at the moment. Sorry, that looks a little bit Village Hall, doesn't it? But so at the top left, these are some of your pictures from Banksy Captured, which are
Yeah.
available now. That one there has got so good. They named it twice. Very popular, these sort of behind the scenes images. And tell me a bit about the one on the right.
The one on the right, after doing the 8 shoot, I bought a macro lens for the camera, and we'd been corroding lots of materials down at Laz Emporium. So we'd had all the copper and the steel bubbling up, and it looked incredible. So I then put it under the eye of the macro lens, where it looked even more incredible. And then we started playing around with the color of it, and started making these. It's like I don't really care whether anyone likes them, and I'm having fun.
Steve, from all the street art and the photography fans around the world, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Steve.